festival. You are listening to SGFR, podcast radio for the festival. Now broadcasting highlights and top picks, your tasty, tantalizing tease for this coming year.
Daryl, thank you for joining me here in the interview suite for the Strange Games Festival.
And it's lovely to be back. I am very pleased to be with you again.
We all missed you, you know. It's like standing around in corners, moping, thinking, where is he? That sort of thing.
We shouldn't just restrict it to once a year when the festival comes around.
I guess so, yes. Talking about the festival, I understand you are up to nefarious fun-based activities for the festival. Someone even mentioned something about the last final conference.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to it, as well as the one or two other things that I'll be organising as well.
Oh, okay. Tell more. Tell us all. Tell us everything.
Everything. Okay. Well, I've been involved with the festival for more years than I care to think about. Young Simon, who organises the festival, asked me some years ago if I would do for want of a better term, a larger game, something involving a number of people, which would be a little bit involved. And back then, I ran something we called a sort of a live action role playing game.
Yeah.
So what that is, it involves, well, there can be different types, but it generally involves people take on a character in a particular situation. Now that situation could be all sorts of things. And back then I ran a sort of haunted house murder mystery type game. This year I'm running something called the Last Final Conference. Officially, this is what's called a theatre style salon LARP.
Ooh, sounds good.
So it's a sort of subset of LARPing where the focus is more on narrative and character interaction rather than combat or physical activity. And so I wanted to do something which was a bit more interactive and also a bit more flexible, so that if we have a small number of people, it will still run. If we manage to fill it, it will still run. Overall, I can have between, I think it's 15 or 52 participants. The focus is on interaction between the participants, conversation, debate, sometimes secret dealings, maybe even some puzzles if I can find some time to come up with some.
So I have to ask this question because I have no idea what the Last Final Conference is. Is there a story behind it? Is there a theme? Is there a setting? Is everyone saving the world? Or are we just gathered together to, set up a donkey sanctuary?
Okay, so the premise, I'll read out to you what I've got written here. So each empire has sent its delegation to this conference with the last hope to find a peaceful resolution, avoid further bloodshed, and create a prosperous future for the galaxy. The stakes are high, and the entire galaxy is watching. And then I've got a little bit that I'll actually read out to all the attendees.
Yes.
The galaxy is on the verge of destruction, and this peace conference is the last hope for bringing about peace amongst the four dominant empires, the Carrymen, the Vashuto, Barin, and the Sujuk. However, achieving peace is not a simple task, as each empire has its own interests, ambitions, and fears. The negotiations will be fierce, and the outcome uncertain. Will it be peace, a truce, surrender, or war? The destiny of the galaxy is in your hands.
Wow, that's fantastic. What's the win condition, or is it a co-op?
I've always had a long-standing interest in how, on a better term, politics and international diplomacy works. And this is sort of a simulation of that, but in a safe environment. So each faction will comprise a number of participants, but they don't all have exactly the same view as to what is the best outcome for their faction.
Yeah.
Just like the real world.
So presumably that's partly set by the instructions each faction receives and partly set by the creativity of the people in the faction?
Exactly. There's some flexibility around what people can do, but essentially each participant will receive a little bit of background, motivation, and their goals. There's some mechanics around how the various things will work. But, if they want to go off-piste, so to speak, they can speak with a moderator and say, I'd like to go on a spying mission and so forth. And we will have some rules for moderating that outcome.
Yeah.
May or may not go the way that people intend.
If there are 4 factions and this has capacity for up to 52 people, that's 13 people in each faction. What roles will they have? Or is each faction a mega game in its own right?
Depending upon the particular faction, each one has its own personality, if you want a better term. So
Yeah.
there might be particular ministers, there might be generals, there might be diplomats, and so forth. So each person will have a name and a role, but they will also have a little sheet explaining their particular view of the world, let's say.
How much of this is created by you? Because I know of old that you're a creative chap in your own right. Or is this kind of a whole property that you've been able to acquire for us to use?
That's a very good question. When Simon approached me this year, asking me to run something, I was very keen to do something Dune-esque.
Ooh,
Without,
lovely.
of course,
Yes.
infringing anybody's copyright. What sort of became clear to me talking to people is, although people are familiar with films and so forth, actually, I think
Yeah.
the vast majority of people don't have, on a better term, my level or a super fan's level of understanding of what's going on in Dune. So I sat down and was surfing the web as one does, and I came across a site that I had used before and looked at before. It's something called the Interactive Drama website, and it's an absolutely fabulous resource for people like me. It's published by an academic in, of all places, Taiwan. It's a whole series of non-profit, non-commercial resources for people like myself, and this is actually one of those. And it was actually written by a chap called Brian David Phillips. He actually uses it as a classroom teaching tool, but it looked like a very enjoyable sort of interactive situation. And to be brutally honest, relatively easy for the moderators to supervise as well, which, given that the moderators will probably discover they're taking part shortly before, and it's quite important.
It actually sounds like a great deal of fun. And what are the kind of wild cards that are built into the game? Do you have assassins? Do you have nefarious plots that are layered into the fabric of it?
Yeah, that's again a very good question, Andy. With any LARP or mega game, ideally what the creators are looking for is, for want of a better term, emergent properties.
Mm.
So what I mean by that is a situation is set up, and then the players, participants, come up with great entertaining ideas. Let me see if I can illustrate an example. I took part in a mega game a little while ago, and it was a variant on Watch the Skies,
Yes.
which you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
And I was part of the United Nations team.
Excellent. Yes.
And my role was not really prescribed at all. And initially, I was sent around basically to beg money from the countries of the
Yes.
United Nations had no money budget. Slightly more interesting, a bit later, I was approached by a large fruit company
Yeah.
which had somehow got control of Suriname in South America, and that they wanted a seat on the United Nations. Now, I think, much to my discredit, I then sold them the right to have a vote on this.
Well done.
So we put forward a UN resolution that the country of Fruitopia be admitted as a member of the United Nations General Assembly. That's what we're looking for. I mean, the rules didn't really address anything that took place there. It didn't address a company taking control of a country.
Yes.
It didn't really specify how money could change hands over something like that. It was just saying, you can sort of freely trade certain things.
Mm.
And the only real rule that was there was the United Nations Secretary General had to propose the resolution, and then there would be a vote by all of the countries that were part of the UN.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it was kind of left to the players to get up with it.
Yes.
That was, if I might say so, probably one of the more or less interesting things that took place. Far more bizarre was the genetically engineered beavers who then took over much of the rest of the solar system. But when the participants come along, we'll give them like a name badge, which will have their role and faction on, and we'll give them their particular motivations and goals. They will have the opportunity within their factions to have their initial strategizing session, perhaps send envoys to other factions to gain insight or, sow discord, as the case may be. And people who are lower down the hierarchy within a faction can then, well, maybe not plot, but perhaps support their, the higher ups who are close to their own view, or possibly even conspire against them.
Yeah.
Far be it from me to say. So that will be the initial phase. Then there'll be a negotiation phase. Then the heart of the game is actually drafting a treaty. So,
Mhm.
the particular delegates from each faction will sit down and will draw up a treaty. Of course, there might be secret clauses and hidden protocols and the like. Then we'll have the voting on the treaty, and everyone will be able to vote, though some people will have more votes than others. At any point, there can be what we term a leadership crisis coup
Ooh,
within a particular faction.
yes.
The faction can basically vote to oust their leadership, and of course, there might be one or two unexpected events that occur.
That's brilliant. Sounds like a great deal of fun. How long do you imagine this game would last for?
Penciled in 3 to 4 hours. I actually think it might go a little faster than that.
Right, yeah. Yes, a goodly afternoon, as it were, or a goodly half day. Well, I think it's absolutely inspired. It sounds like the perfect thing to bring to the festival. Thank you very much for telling us all about that. I hope it gets inundated in just the right number of people.
Thank you. And it's always a joy speaking to you.
You've been listening to SGFR, the podcast radio channel for the Strange Games Festival.
This season's hosts have been James, Laura, Andy, and Craig.
And if you'd like to come on the show, message us on the festival radio channel on the Strange Games Festival Discord server.